All right. You see that?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Jesse, Megan, thanks for jumping on. We got someone else here too. I can't see whose name is on here, but then Libby is on. She's my admin. Just to let you guys know, I try to do these webinars once a month. I've done, we did a tax and inflation webinar last 2 nights, and actually stole a couple pieces from Core Income's inflation presentation, which is really good. So I appreciate that from you guys. But I try to do these webinars at least once a month if I can, and put some good information out there for my people, send it out, and like try to keep some good engagement going with that. But I'm not looking directly at you guys. I'm looking at my bigger screen just so you're aware, because you know, somebody's eyes aren't the best anymore. But wanted to go into talk about today. We're going to talk about some RMDs, distributions, required minimum distributions, or distributions from your retirement plans, because this comes into a really big issue for a lot of different reasons, but especially as we're talking about increasing taxes coming up, or more people are retiring. 10,000 baby boomers are retiring today right now, and there's a lot of worry about that for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and basic. And with taxes going up, like what are the best ways to take my money, or how should I be doing this? And there's a lot of different things you can look at, you know, but it doesn't take much provisional income to come in to all of a sudden create taxation on your Social Security. And so anyway, I mean, there's even, I don't know if one of you guys saw recently that if there was no change to Social Security, I think by 2030, they would be forced to reduce the benefit to 77% of what was the original promised value. And so it's a tough thing, especially when it comes to planning. Is you know, we don't really plan on taking a 23% pay cut like that. And so there's some different things that have been proposed by the Biden administration. But that's just an example of the need that it can't be a willy-nilly, just take whatever money we think out of whatever account that we think. We've got to be planning. And so taking distributions out of your accounts is basically how am I going to take the money I've been saving and the income from that, and how am I going to flip that switch, and where do I start, what accounts, and that's a big deal. And so I'll start with just a little bit of background on Pro Capital. And so who I am, my name is Corey Proctor. I started this company, and we're based out of Southlake, Texas. Here we have an amazing community, and my family and I live in Trophy Club, Texas, just down the street. But we have our family. You see a picture. I got to update this picture. We just got some new family pictures in from last month that are really good. But this is a year old. But I have my wife Megan. She's an estate planning attorney, which is great because I didn't marry her just for the looks. Okay, she's a whole lot more brains than that. And in fact, if we're at the house right now, everything on back, you can see my old jersey here, but everything on the back wall at our house is all basically her degrees, her awards, everything from her. And so it's a little lopsided in our house, but she's the best ever. We have 2 kids. Our girl Grace, she's almost 7 right now. I always tell people I make her lift weights with me because I need her strong enough to throw it out of some guy that wants to rub up on her. And I always tell them, I go, you can make them bleed and I'll just bury the body later, right? If we ever have a problem, I'm backup when that case comes. And then our second is Hank, and he's almost 2 right now. And this guy is absolutely destroying my house. It's the best thing in the world. But we named him that on purpose because we lost somebody close to us, and Hank is actually a medieval diminutive of John, which is my dad's name, but that name means God is gracious. And so it was a pretty good thing. But faith has been a huge part of our life. But the reason why I started Pro Capital is a lot of different reasons. My background, I played 6 years in the NFL. Mostly here with the Dallas Cowboys, which is why I have my jersey. You see that hanging up. but a lot of different things happen. When I was in high school, I rear-ended a lady, and which she ended up filing a lawsuit against my mom and my stepdad, and which was a tough deal, and put them in a really bad position, and ended up putting a whole lot of strain on the family finances. And so a lot of things had to change from that. And so that sat on me. So when I came into the NFL, I was really frugal with my money. And so thank goodness I was like that, because it eventually gave us a whole lot of options. And so there's lots of different reasons, but kind of the big lesson that I learned from that is that money gives you choices. Money gives you options. It's a security blanket that, if something were to go wrong, or you had to be out of a job, or lose somebody, or there was some situation, it's a blanket to fall on. It's a pillow to fall on, right? To give us a cushion, so we have options, or we can make choices happen in our life. And if one thing is for sure, is that, at 20 years old, I might have been able to lose it all and go make it back, but at 40, I don't really care to do that, having a wife and 2 kids. So, I want to make sure that I can take care of my people's assets. And where I've kind of coined this at Pro Capital, is what I want to do, and how we separate ourselves here is most asset managers, they go right at the money, they start and they end there, they never go anywhere else. Well, because of my life's situations and what's gone on, and the influences from there, well, I love to be aggressive, that's great, but I want to put a lockbox around somebody's assets, around somebody's life, that's going to keep them from being a subject of major market devaluation or judgment and lawsuit. And so there's lots of ways to do that, and lots of ways to frame that, but if I can basically prevent somebody from having an event that would essentially wipe out all of their life savings, that's my number one priority. That's what I want to do, because at the end of the day, if that event were to take place ever, it doesn't matter how good your asset manager is, it's just a number. And so if I look out for those key areas first, those are going to be the biggest things before I ever get to allocation of money. So wanted to share that with you. That's a big deal to me and what we do here. And so, but today, we're getting a little more targeted about distribution. So we'll get into that and kind of rush through this a little bit, and we'll save just a couple minutes at the end. Hopefully have you guys out in 30 minutes tops. And then I'll distribute this to my people, and also post this up on YouTube as well. So just so you guys can come back and look. But if you got questions at all, you can feel free to pipe in, and we'll address them. I'll give you a moment at the end too. And if there's nothing, that's okay. But we'll go ahead. We'll get started. So, as we're coming into retirement, or we're looking to cross the veil, across that line at some point, we end up having a whole lot of different things that we can pull from, right? You can see up on the screen right here, we have our savings and investments. We got our qualified plans, our 401ks, 403bs, Social Security that we're looking to potentially take, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs. These are more traditional vehicles that we're used to hearing or seeing or using, and they all have rules. They all have structures that we have to abide by, right? Main things here with any qualified accounts is our 59.5 rule. Well, that a lot of you guys know this. Well, we can't take that income out of there technically, in general, till we're 59.5 years old. And then at that time is when we can start taking distributions without any sort of penalty. Currently, if you take it before for a non-qualified distribution, something that, there are qualified distributions before 59.5 that you could take for medical reasons. For the Secure Act brought some of these for adopting a child up to 5,000. I think for a medical or financial hardship of some sort. There's some different reasons. There's a list of qualified reasons, but if you don't have one of those qualified reasons, if you take income before that, you're looking at a potential federal tax penalty of 10% on top of all of that income that you take out of that being taxable as taxed as ordinary income. So a lot of people, they get surprised because you might have heard somebody that said, I went after my dream and I cashed in my retirement to do it. And, I'll hear that and I go, man, so you got the 10% hit then, huh? And so sometimes you always get somebody that reels back and they're like, I had no idea that was even a deal or that was even a thing. And so they always get caught off and kind of get their breath taken away by that being all of a sudden presenting itself, and them, what they thought they had in their account is not actually what they took home, wasn't their net take home. And so, that's a big thing that catches people by surprise. And so that's something that that's one thing that we got to be aware of with some of these accounts. And so, if you're a 401k, if it's a qualified account that's pre-tax money, like your 401k, 403b, traditional IRA, stuff like that, we got to know that there's that 59.5 rule. And then on the back end of that, right now, what used to be 70.5, there's a 72 year rule also. So meaning if I haven't taken any income at 72, the government is going to force me to take income. Those are called RMDs, or required minimum distributions. And those can have a really big effect on how it gets taxed. And then, one of our favorites is the Roth IRA, although it has limits. It also has a 59.5 rule. So anything we put in our Roth, we have to have it for 5 years minimum in that account. And then it won't turn into tax-free money until 59.5, which then we can take it as an income stream and take it tax-free. And so then that number is real. And then that one doesn't have a required age top end on it. So it doesn't have that rule of 72, or not the rule of 72, but it doesn't have that 72 age where you have to start taking RMDs because it's tax-free money. It can continue growing, and that stays the same for if you were to pass away and hand that off to your child or another beneficiary, that stays tax-free for them too. So that's a big deal. So some things we're going to talk about a little bit, talk about what to take first, some specific situations. It's going to be super general because I don't know everybody's situation that's going to be listening to this or that's on the call, but there's lots of ways we can do this. But how to take distributions, investment strategies, rules to remember, benefits and beneficiaries, and I'll harp on a few things over and over again, but we'll go over some of these, like what to take first. These are crucial accounts because some are taxable, some are not. Some have advantages over others. How to take those distributions, like, well, with the age, like we talked about the 59.5 rule, the 72 rule. This is, those are important things to remember, because how to take those distributions can affect how much we end up taking home. And the rules to remember are the same thing. Benefits and beneficiaries. Beneficiaries is a huge one. When it comes to risk management, the area that I start out first in my practice is beneficiaries is a big one, because there is a ton of unintentional disinheritance that takes place in people's estates. And when it comes to these accounts, and so I can't tell you how many times I come in. I come from a large family, a split. My parents split when I was young, and they remarried, and so I have a lot of step siblings. But it can get hairy. It can get confusing when you have extended families like that. And this happens all the time when somebody will come in the office and they'll talk about their 401k. Okay, who's the beneficiary on your 401k? And they're like, well, shoot, I think that's actually my ex-husband or my ex-spouse or my ex-wife or something like that. And it's somebody else. And they just didn't take the chance to go change that. And then it happens all the time. Somebody's unintentionally disinherited, or money goes to the wrong person or to the wrong place, and we give power to somebody else that we didn't intend to. And so this ends up being a big area that you gotta start thinking about to make sure you got these things in line. And so generally, when we're talking about what to take first, we're looking at these three different areas. Excuse me. Generally speaking, and this could be different for other people, but generally when we're talking about this, we can take from taxable accounts first, then tax deferred, and then tax exempt. Why is that the case? Well, currently, usually our taxable accounts, this might be like a retail brokerage account. if that's not in a tax deferred bucket, that means that those taxable accounts are getting taxed yearly. So any dividends that we're receiving or any sort of distributions or any gains that we're realizing in those accounts, we're getting taxable. We're getting a 1099 at the end of the year on that, right? And so we're getting taxed yearly on that. So it's getting hit all the time. And so we usually want to take from those really because deferred and tax exempt have more power than a taxable account does. And so, and what I mean by that is when we go into a tax deferred account, and I'm going to give you an example here in a little bit of that, but when we go into a tax deferred account, a lot of you guys might have heard the phrase, generally it grows faster and it grows bigger. And that's because we don't have any taxes being taken out. It's not getting hit. That full number, that gross number is compounding on itself constantly. And so it's able to grow faster because of that. And so if we can leave the tax, we'll start with taxable accounts, then go to tax deferred. And then the last one we always usually take is the tax exempt. And the reason that is, well, when you think about it, what's our best account? Well, the tax-free one, obviously, tax exempt one, the one where I don't have to pay taxes on. Well, I'd rather take, in general, I'd rather pay taxes today, especially since we're in the lowest, because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, lowest taxable environment we've ever been in or been in for a long time. Although that's going to potentially change with the Biden proposals. But if what he does, if anybody under that 400,000 range, if he sticks to that proposal, which is yet to be seen, everybody under that range will still have some advantaged rates. And so if we can we can get taxed at a lower rate now, even if we're still working, or when you choose to cross the veil, we want that tax-free account or tax-exempt account to grow as much as it can. Because if that grows tax deferred as well, and if that grows bigger and bigger, right, we have a bigger pool to take from. So we want to let that one grow as long as we possibly can. And so, especially when there is no, especially on Roth IRAs or any other tax exempt account, there is no top end age where we have to start taking required minimum distributions. That's 72, like your traditional IRA, 401k, 403b, any pre-tax money. It doesn't have that, so we can let it grow forever. And so that's a really that's an advantage in a big way. So that's kind of generally the areas we want to go. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but how to take distributions, there's a few different options we can talk about, right? We can leave it alone, which is actually what a lot of people that are in a higher income category or higher asset category, some people come and they don't need it. And so they're like, well, I'm just going to leave it for my people, and I might have a pension that I'm pulling from, or I have some other category, or I'm still working, I'll work till I die or something like that. And so I don't really need it, so I'll just leave it where it's at. Well, that's fine. It's an option for sure, but we have to still be aware of what accounts have what rules associated. So same thing, qualified accounts, you're at some point, you're going to have to take required minimum distributions or RMDs off of those. And so I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather take RMDs at a time where I'm lowest in my taxable rate or I'd rather take distributions at a lower tax bracket than at a potential higher tax bracket. And the reason I say that is because, you know, right now in the United States with our government, we are at at the highest debt we've ever been in as a nation, and we don't seem to be slowing down the spending at all. We got stimulus bills coming out the wazoo all over the place, even when we have previous bills that haven't been spent or funds that haven't been spent all the way. And so they just don't seem to stop and keep their hand out of the cookie jar, essentially. And especially with these lower rates, we know taxes are going to go up. We don't know what they're going to be. The current proposals, if you do fall in that higher income range, are pretty significant. And so you're talking about, even on the top end right now, the proposed tax rate for everybody above 400,000 in income, talking about moving from 37% to 39.6%. But then you also have to add the other taxes that are on top of it. So you have a 39.6 marginal rate plus the added 6.2% if you're a W-2 worker Social Security tax that they want to add on everybody in that income range. And then the 3.8% net investment income tax, or the Obamacare surcharge. So you end up at a over 40%, with it end up being 39, 40. It was a 49 point some odd percent. Can't do the math in my head right now, but it was a 49+% total federal tax rate on the top end. That's not including state income. So in California, that would be 62 total percent on that. So in New Jersey would be 60% for my friends over there. So it's these are things that we got to think about, especially right now. If we're talking about the end of 2021 and this going into effect in 22, and nothing has been agreed on or has been set yet. But the Secure Act was rushed in at the end of 2000. I believe 18, if I'm getting my years right, but like 2018, it was implemented right at the end of the year. So it was effective January 1 of 2019. So it made a whole lot of CPAs roll and a whole lot of people go over, but you could leave it alone, but we got to be aware of this stuff. We could take it as a lump sum. Some people, they're like, well, hey, I want to realize this tax bracket. If I'm paying attention to where I am in the tax bracket right now, I want to take it now, and I want to allocate it in a different way. So you can take it as a lump sum, but you got to realize that same thing. If it's pre-tax money, qualified funds, 401k, IRA, something like that, traditional IRA, all of it is taxable, 100% taxable money, right? We're just waiting on a note to give to the government. So that's an option to do it also, but you got to work out the math to see that whether that's worth it or not. We can roll the money over. That's a big one. I think it was over 57% of the nation typically rolls money over from an employer-sponsored plan over to an IRA. And the reason is because simply IRAs, we got a ton more options in there. You're talking about basically 8 options. There goes the phone. You're talking about basically like 8 options in your 401k to 8,000 in your IRA. And so there's a whole lot more to do there. You can also consolidate all your funds and get everything together, which I'm a big fan of. It's harder to manage money when you have accounts all over the place. And so if you can put that aggregate it into one area, which is one thing we do with my company at part of my family office offer, is being an aggregate for all things. That's all documents and all accounts. And so I'm a big fan of that and a big advocate of it. So that's a big deal. You could annuitize it, any of your money. So what an annuity is, there's different types. There's investment only annuities, there's fixed, there's variable annuities, there's lots of stuff out there that you could be confused by. But to annuitize your money is essentially try to guarantee an income stream for the rest of your life. And there's different things, adders, riders you could add on to that. But that's a viable option for people that want to make sure that their portfolio isn't subject to major market devaluation, or that their income is going to be severely affected by that. And the reason that's a big deal is I'll share people, okay, because you'll have the traditional Wall Street approach, which is basically just take 5% out of your investment accounts yearly. And they say, don't worry about it because the S&P 500 has done 10.3% annually in his lifetime, which they would be right, but they don't even, what you can't gloss over is, I'll give you an example, like the year 1996 to about 2012 or 13, the S&P 500 was either flat or down. And 2 times during that period, it dropped. One was 49%, one was 54%, I believe it was. And so if you're taking 5% withdrawal just out of your accounts there, I always tell people, say, if you got $1 million in your account, so we're taking 5%, that's 50 grand a year, and we're trying to project for this growth, which is great. I go, okay, so what happens when it cuts in half? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I go, well, so if I were to tell you, the market was going to, we're taking that 5%, that 50 grand out of that account of that million, and the market cuts in half, and that valuation of your account now goes to 500,000. Well, 5% of that is now 25,000. And if your advisor were to come to you and have to tell you to cut your income in half like that, what would you say? And most people usually respond, they're like, well, I would be ticked off. And I tell them, I go, and you should be, because you would probably tell me to pound sand if I said something like that. And And so what that becomes is a real risk. And the problem with that is most people don't want to adjust their income if a situation like that were to occur again. And so when they don't, now you're facing the problem of possibly running out of money. And longevity is a real big issue, especially when Social Security was not built on the length of time people are on it right now. And so these are big risks that we got to look at, but these are options also. And then option 5 here you see is a combination of all of it. So I could leave some alone right now. I could take a lump sum out. I could roll it over into an IRA. I could annuitize some of it. That's typically probably the best approach, is a combination of it all to some degree, depending on the person. But these are options that you can that you have on why do that. And I mentioned this earlier. Here's a little graph just to show 57% of owners used a rollover to help fund their traditional IRA, or they wanted to consolidate all their funds into one place, which that's what I'm a fan of. I have clients with multiple advisors, although it's tough because to be frank, I can't effectively manage a whole portfolio the right way if I can't see what this other guy is doing. And so there are some people that are fans of that. I'm not necessarily. I like talking with one person and creating a plan with my advisor, with my CPA, with my estate planning attorney, with all the people that are in my team. I create that so that we can have a plan going forward, and there's no blind spots that end up coming into it, right? And so I don't want to do that. And so there's different investment strategies that we could talk about. We could talk about these are super generic, but we can talk about protecting the principal. And usually people look at that traditionally are CDs, certificates of deposit, which to me, it's more like a certificate of depreciation. That's just a quip at it. But right now, any cash accounts are just not making anything. Right now we have interest rates continue to stay low. So any yields out of those accounts or interest that you might have out of those accounts are going to stay low with it. And so I even had one client, he said, man, he's a big fan of CDs. And he goes, I went to the bank when I had one mature and I asked them what was the next one. And I think they had like a 15-month time frame for 40 bips or 40 basis points or 0.4% return. And so the tough thing is especially when we're flipping the page to retirement or looking at retirement, and for where we're at currently in 2021, coming off the shoulders or coming off the backside of this pandemic and continuing to mess around with this stuff, we had in May, inflation was at 5.4%. Well, now it's at 6.2% when the Federal Reserve is trying to keep it at 2%. Well, we're triple what they're trying to keep it at right now. So inflation ends up being a huge problem. So the issue becomes, well, okay, that's a protecting principal thing. And so a lot of people say like, well, I like my equities or I like other areas, but I don't want to lose money. And the problem really is, well, if we're not gaining, we're losing anyways, unless it has a specific target or you have a specific assignment for that set of funds. If we're not making, we're losing. And so there's lots of different ways we can do this, but this is a tough category for a lot of people to be in, especially right now when money supply is at an all-time high. So, but there is comfort in some of that. So the second one is generate income. So we can look at different areas for that, right? You can look at bonds. You can look at income, some sort of dividend producing mutual funds or stocks. You can look at annuities of some sort. There's fixed annuities, there's variable annuities with income riders on there that have the guarantees. But there's a lot of people, I live in Texas, so there's a lot of people who have a lot of real estate that are generating passive income off of those, which I'm a fan of also. But those are a big part of that. And then the last one here is growth potential, right? We can look at individual stocks, single stocks, any sort of growth oriented funds, variable annuities that don't have any income riders on there. Those are nice because I have my tax deferred bucket. If I want to grow that faster and not have anything subject to taxes this year or in the near future. So those are really good ones. And so this actually plays into a bit of what I deemed my investment strategy or philosophy called purpose-driven investing. And here at Pro Capital, I'd venture to tell somebody, if you guys have an advisor or you have somebody you're listening to, or if you're self-managing, ask yourself or ask your advisor, what is your investment philosophy? Like what is your rules on money? And if they don't have one, I would take that as a red flag. If you're self-managing, you don't have one, take that as a red flag. You might be doing all right now, but it'll be a tough place to be if you're not sure, you're not convicted about where you should go in a time of question or a time of struggle or a down market. So but what I believe here, we believe here, is that purpose-driven investing is essentially money is a byproduct of our life, and that is a driver of driving your purpose in this life. And so that could be your lifestyle that you're trying to support in retirement or currently working a part-time job, whatever the case. But it's your lifestyle, it's the charitable giving, it's the leaving to your beneficiaries, it's taking care of your family, it's everything, whatever is involving in your purpose. And all of that, the very basis of it is that any investment has to produce income either now or in the future. And so, when you're talking about dropping in a protected, a hybrid bucket, and a growth bucket, that's what we're talking about in that purpose-driven investing, is that we got to get cash flow at some point. It's got to work for our benefit at some point in the future. So if I have it'd be awesome if I had a $10 million Van Gogh painting sitting in my living room. But the problem is, if that's not sitting in the museum for people to pay tickets to go see this thing and generate a cash flow back to me, it's really kind of dead in the water. I love the asset, and I might be keeping it as a growth potential to sell someday to generate that income. But if it's just sitting there, it's not really doing much. And so everything's got to produce cash flow at some point. Okay. Here's just a couple investment strategies that I have mocked up, but one is aggressive, one is more conservative, and you'll see here. So, okay, the more aggressive one here is stocks 80%, and a little more like 80-20 approach that you might see in the traditional Wall Street category. And this is just based off returns and how that changes our outlook. And so, see an 80% equity, 10% bonds, 10% cash. And you'll see in this, just this scenario, best year we had was at a 24.3% gain. Worst year was negative 20.93 or 29.3. And so that averaged out over the time period of 6.2% growth. And then in the conservative 160 cash, 20 stocks, 20 bonds, super conservative portfolio though. Best year was 8.1%, worst was negative 7.1. The average was 3.7. Okay, well, how does that affect us? So, that cash bucket in that conservative portfolio is basically standing still, right? That's that protected income or principal. That's somebody saying, man, I see this in my bank account or my brokerage account. I want to sit in my money market. I want to sit in my savings account. I don't want to see that number go down. Well, the problem is, like I told you about inflation right now, 30 years ago, in 1990, $1,000, what it bought in 1990 compared to today is less than half. So I want to say it was about $454 that we're able to buy with that same $1,000 today. So your purchasing power goes way down. So the dollar figure, there's a little bit of a psychological play on this, but the dollar figure stays the same. So it looks like I'm not losing anything, but the dollar's ability to buy what it used to buy is not. And so that's the problem with inflation, is that dollar doesn't go near as far as it used to. And so this is a big deal. And so here you see the difference of these two accounts. And so you'll see the conservative portfolio in blue here over a 20-year time period. I think what did we start? We started with 100,000 over a 20-year time period. With that return was a 202,000, almost 203. And then you see just with a few points more that I think we had a 3.7% return on that 202 on the conservative, and then a 6.2% on the more aggressive one. But you see there's this $80,000 difference. The aggressive ended up making over 281,000. So that's a big deal when you're talking about preparing for retirement or being in retirement. Just those couple points can make a drastic difference in how much money you're able to pull from. And so if that's a percentage, that's a big difference. 50% on $1 million is totally different than 50% on 50,000 or on $100,000, right? And so we want that compounding effect to take place in those accounts, and so that could be a big deal. So the question starts begging here is all right, well, how do I balance this out? Try not to lose very much, but also try to find some opportunity for gain to make sure that I can hedge inflation and keep my dollar worth what it's able to spend, right? And so that's the constant balance, but it depends on each person. And so we would have to get a meeting to talk in person about that. There is no perfect for every single one, but I'll give you some strategies. So we could diversify this, right? We can go into some mutual funds, some equity funds, and mix it around a little bit. And so what I like about mutual funds or any sort of fund group, this could be ETFs, UITs, or a subcategory of ETFs. But all the point of those families are to diversify. So instead of putting like 100% of, or a big allocation, a big percentage of my money into one stock or to just a few stocks, well, I could put it into a fund and have a whole lot of stocks. I could have 10 or up to a couple hundred of them and really spread my risk out quite a bit. So my performance or my valuation over time isn't so crazy, right? It doesn't have these big drastic swings and be such a, but some people can't handle that emotionally. And so it wouldn't be such a strain on your heart sometimes. And so that's, that's a big deal, but I love the diversification of those. They're professionally managed, they're convenient, and also they're liquid, right? I can always get at them, unlike real estate where I can't just punch a wall in my house and grab a pile of cash if I need it, right? I have to sell the house to do that. And so cons of those is, all right, there's management fees, taxes associated, there's pros and cons. I will tell you this, there is no perfect investment, right? And so if you think there is, that's, that's your book, but I'll let you roll with that. Other strategies we can hit on, we can split annuities. These are some different things that we can have conversations of in our practice. Is okay, we could have one fixed annuity where it's producing so much, and we can have another variable annuity with no income rider that is I just want that tax deferral where and I can add one later, who knows, but I need more aggressive growth, but I need income now. And so you could have some sort of mix like that coming in. Or you have, what do I have here? I got to know my own slides here, but we have, there's, this one's divided into 3 pools. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but we can divide it into lots of different ways. But you could have several different annuities plus your brokerage accounts, plus your real estate. You could be taking, a lot of people are looking to start protecting principal or protecting themselves legally. Especially as they get later in age, just because they don't want any legal ramifications. Like if someone were to hit them, get into a car wreck, and all of a sudden find themselves in a lawsuit, and any potential funds that now are in your name are potentially subject to that lawsuit. And so that's, there's different approaches, but they want to protect funds as they get older to make sure that stuff can't be taken away, or an event couldn't happen where it's taken away. But you could do a mix of annuities, brokerage accounts, IRAs, traditional brokerage IRAs, employer-sponsored plans. All of that mixes in. It brings in several different income streams on top of our Social Security. Plus, if you have a pension, which would be great, all those are contributing into one income stream into the house. And so there's a lot of ways, a lot of things that we got to look about. So I want to wrap up a little bit with some rules to remember. You guys got to remember this. 70.5, I have this wrong right now. It's 72. It used to be RMDs, or required minimum distributions, used to be 70.5. They changed it to 72. So that's correction on my slide here. 72. Remember that right now. And that's based on your age, account value, and life expectancy. So that's a calculation that comes out every single year. That's a big deal to remember. And so what I don't want people to get caught off guard and say, I don't need it, and they just kick it down the road a little bit, and then all of a sudden be forced with RMDs and they might still be working or might still have a high income, but you're forcing yourself into a higher tax bracket potentially than you need to, or they're taking too, now they have to take more than what they need. And so, again, it could be okay then, but everybody's different, but it might be more beneficial to start taking it earlier, especially in a lower taxable environment, so that we could try to take advantage of better situations and be forced into one we don't want to be in. And so a real massive one to look out for is the excise tax, the excess acclimation penalty. So what that means is if you're 72 and you don't take the required minimum distribution that the IRS wants you to take, they will fine you or tax you 50% of the amount that's not distributed that was supposed to be required. And so I don't know about you guys, but any accounts that have an RMD already are 100% taxable. Plus you're talking about adding a 50% fee on top of that. I'm not for that. So an excise tax on top of that. And so that's a big no-no, a big penalty that you guys need to be aware of, because they will make it hurt if you don't take care of it ahead of time. Okay. I told you before, there are some qualified distributions that you can take pre 59.5, right? And here's a few of those right now. Exceptions to the rule: unreimbursed medical expenses, if you're disabled, higher education expenses, if you're building a buyer or building a first home, those would be qualified. Now the Secure Act added adopting a child up to $5,000 you can take, but it's still taxable. These are some qualified distributions that you could take. The money is still 100% taxable coming out of those accounts. You're just not subject to the 10% penalty that the IRS would impose. And so those are big ones right here. Naming your beneficiaries. I can't stress this one enough. This is a major one, an area that I start first with a lot of times in my risk management and my estate planning. There's so many times where somebody hasn't named the correct beneficiaries on there. Here in Texas, we have a community property estate. Like I'm from Washington State, the same thing there, where the spouse is automatically the beneficiary. And if they're not, they have to sign off on it if they rename somebody else as the primary beneficiary. But a big one here is contingent beneficiaries. And so this is where things can get lost. And I'll give you an example. So contingent beneficiaries, there's different things you can recommend here, but I see a lot of issues here where people usually leave, their children or some other beneficiary as contingent beneficiary. Well, that's fantastic, but let's just say you left it to your children. Let's say you have an only child and you have them as the contingent beneficiary. Well, if something happens to both of you guys, and let's say that child has a marriage on the rocks, or is facing a creditor issue or a possible bankruptcy, or a lawsuit. If something were to happen to you and you were to pass, both of you were to pass, and now them is listed as contingent, that gets distributed all to them. Now we're possibly facing an issue where those funds are now available to be used to be settled as a judgment, and to be used in the judgment as a lawsuit, or to be split in the potential divorce, or to be used in that creditor settlement case. And so what I don't want, and I'm sure you guys are in line with me, what I don't want for me is when, something happens, when my life expires and my wife and I pass, when we want to leave, if something happened to us, we want to leave our assets to our children, and nobody else. And that's their names, nobody else's, and specifically. And so it's a tough deal to look at when they've seen it happen over and over again, where all of a sudden it's split to, and it gets unintentionally left to somebody they did not mean for it to get left to. And so that's a big problem. So you can fix those issues. If you got questions about that, love to address that after or in a meeting. But beneficiary is a huge one, especially as people are changing jobs. They have old 401ks over here, so they're leaving money over here and don't change the beneficiary. And so they, we have lots of people in extended family situations like I come from. And so now you're facing, there's a lot more complexity, but now if we don't dot those I's and cross those T's, we're going to leave it to somebody we didn't mean to. And so potentially. And so I want to stress this one in a big way. And so just a couple, I guess, Social Security quick hit here. Obviously, we can start taking this at 62. Where'd my mouse go? Get my mouse back on this page. We can start taking this at 62. Full age is at 67 right now, full retirement age. And then this just gives a few money amounts for this. But this is to each person really their own individual situation that we can look up on ssa.gov. And so we can do that. But that's it. What I have right now for the RMD or for the distribution presentation right now. Is there anything, do you guys on right now, anybody on currently, you guys have any questions or comments? I want to give you guys a second. If you got something, we'll address it right now.
Hey, Corey, it's Jesse. I thought that was awesome. I think that's a lot of great info for people to just kind of have straight. There's so many different ways to kind of look at that, and considering taxation is a huge part of that. So yeah, I mean, it's all great info. The age limits, the 59 and a half, the 72 RMDs, you know, and the exceptions to those rules are all really good info for people to know. So I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. Thanks for that, Jesse. Libby, Megan, and we got one other person on the call. You guys have any comments, questions? You can chime in. If you can tell me if this is bad or good or ugly, you better speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, no questions on my end. Again, like Jesse said, really appreciate it. I think that was a lot of really good information and stuff that always great for people to hear.
Awesome. Is that Megan?
Yes.
Oh, you're in here twice right now. Okay, awesome. Well, hey, I'm thankful for you guys. You guys provide a lot of good information to me. So I know we just started our relationship, so thank you for that. If that's it, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If anybody's watching this right now, watches the replay, you got questions about any bit of this, go to my website, procapitaltx.com. You can submit a form or give a call to the office or email me. You see that on the screen right now, and give us a shout. Love to help. Love to see get a strategy session going, or just to visit, have coffee in the office. There's no documents that need to show up in that first visit, and all it is really a get to know you session. It's what that looks like when somebody comes in for the first time. I always tell people, I go, you're scrutinizing me. I told this at the last two events last night. You're scrutinizing me, but I'm scrutinizing you in the same way. I don't want to work with a bunch of weirdos, just like you don't want to work with one either. So, but if you guys got anything, reach out to us, Pro Capital. We'd love to talk, see if we can help at all. And if not, that's okay too. But I appreciate you guys getting on. Thanks, Jesse, Megan, Libby, helping out, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Corey.
All right, we'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye.